So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Warmongers, and we have a rather curious situation here. Vance called on the Pope not to interfere in American affairs, and Trump commented that he doesn't want a Pope who criticizes the President of the USA. Then Trump added that he needs a big, strong, great Pope who has great policies, does great things, and doesn't criticize America. Why was this said? It was said because Pete Hegseth declared that God is on the side of Americans in the war in Iran, to sum it up, and the Pope responded that God is not on the side of leaders who hold swords in their hands and have blood on their hands, to paraphrase. But then Vance responded by saying, "What, so you mean to say that God wasn't on the side of American boys when they went to liberate Europe from the Nazis?" And I would say to that, I think that God wasn't on the side of those who killed his son. However, I just want to say that there's this weird situation here, and Hochi, you were looking forward to this, so please tell me something about it.
I have to jump in here, just so we can clarify one thing before we start this debate. Do you believe God and Jesus are one and the same, or are they two separate things?
Well, by nature, they are two separate things.
No, God is triune. Jesus is actually a divine being, right? Jesus came into being when God entered Mary, so actually Jesus is simply the presence of God on earth. You have the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, right? And all of that is God. The Son is Jesus, the Father is like the Lord, the Spirit is... It's more complicated, but it's actually the same thing in three different forms. That's it. That's it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's how I see it. Anyway, let's take a look at this issue. What do you think? Will a curse be placed on Washington? Will Trump be excommunicated? And should we prepare for a crusade to the United States?
It would be interesting, but I don't know if Trump is Catholic.
No, Trump is an evangelical, or evangelical. No, he's a Presbyterian, I think.
Evangelion?
No, he's a Presbyterian, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Which, in the Czech Republic, is a movement represented by Protestants or the Evangelical Church of Czech Brethren. He's not a Catholic, simply put. He's not a Catholic. He used to be Catholic, but I don't think he is anymore.
Hey, so does that mean that Presbyterianism isn't part of Catholicism?
So he can't be excommunicated.
So he can't be excommunicated?
Yes, right.
Yeah, so we'll make our own church so the Pope can't get to me.
So it comes from the English.
The Pope doesn't want to annul your childless marriage. And you can't have another woman because you have a wife, so you start your own religion, behead your wife, and go sleep with another.
A religion with gambling and prostitutes. Anyway, this whole bizarre situation seems to me like it's just another explosion of Trump's ego. And what do you think causes that? Because Trump even styled himself as Jesus here. He later said it's not like Jesus, but that it's a doctor. Just to save it, because styling yourself as Jesus is a bit too much, you know? Especially in America. And of course, there are still a lot of Catholics in America, right? It's a very religious country. So this kind of disrespect towards the Pope, especially towards an American Pope, you know, seems to me like another nail in the coffin for the American, well, MAGA or right-wing scene led by Donald Trump.
I would just like to remind you that according to the Christian faith, putting yourself in the position of Jesus or God is, I think, the worst sin you can commit as a Christian, right?
I'm not completely sure.
By Catholic law, they'd burn you at the stake for that.
Okay. Look, I'm not completely sure, but in any case, whether you're Catholic or just Presbyterian or whatever, comparing yourself to Jesus and styling yourself as Jesus definitely isn't very humble, and I'd almost say it could be considered blasphemy, yeah.
It's like you're acting as if you didn't know that Trump's middle name is Judas. He's humble.
Ah, yes, that's right. That's right. I still think Trump sees Jesus as his own keyboard player because he walks barefoot and has long hair.
And he gives food to the poor.
And he gives out food, that's right. Jesus is woke, he's fucking woke.
If Donald saw what Jesus actually looked like back in year 0, he'd probably call ICE on him to have him taken to some concentration camp in Florida because there's no way someone that brown could get within 500 meters of him.
Wait, Kermit, are you saying Jesus wasn't Slovak?
Jesus was English, of course. The Pope might have been French, but Jesus is English. Hey, could this actually have any real impact on American politics? What do you think? Is this something that Trump might regret?
Well, since a large part of Republicans are Catholics, for whom the Pope is actually the head of the Catholic Church. And as president, you define yourself in the role of Jesus and even insult your church's highest leader, so a lot of people notice that.
And couldn't it be that nowadays the Pope isn't such an authority for Catholics anymore? And for example, they might have a problem with what Trump criticized, that the Pope is siding with the left? The Pope? Yeah, because the Pope criticized Trump for his deportations, for ISIS actions, for the attacks on Venezuela and Iran, right? So overall, Trump frames it as if the Pope is on the side of the radical left.
Tell me, or let me put it another way, this Pope said the same things his predecessors did. War is bad, people die needlessly, and people suffer, and so on. The popes before him said it, and this Pope says it too. There's nothing special about that. And Trump is just lumping him into whatever category suits him. He simply puts him among his opponents, and his opponents range from, let's say, woke liberals to some center-right voters who disagree with him.
All right, but don't you think that even in the MAGA movement, there will be plenty of, say, even Catholics who will ultimately say that Trump is a higher authority than the Pope? We should definitely get a Catholic here for that. How does someone who is truly religious and sees the Pope as an authority perceive this? We probably can't figure that out here, can we? But I can imagine that some really established, even though Catholic American who believes in MAGA and QAnon and these kinds of things might actually end up throwing away the Pope and accepting Trump instead, because Trump is supposed to be the chosen one, the one who brings the light.
Actually, I've seen more of the opposite.
The opposite, yeah? That more or less people tend to see the Pope as an authority rather than Trump. Yes.
So I saw it on Twitter. Of course, it's my bubble, but I saw that people are just leaving Trump because he basically cast himself in the role of Jesus / God, and that the Pope is still something you just don't touch, whether you're the American president or just anyone else.
And his explanation that he doesn't see it as Jesus but as a doctor just doesn't work. People aren't buying it.
That was probably still in the meantime before he even came up with that statement, I think. Because there was kind of a dead spot there, but I think people probably won't buy it from him anymore. Or at least I hope they won't buy it from him anymore.
It would really be very stupid now. Hey, but when we're talking about stupidity, which isn't foreign to anyone in America, and honestly not here either, let's talk about that part of American stupidity that basically says we're having some kind of schism here. Not a church schism, but a schism of the American far right, the American MAGA. Because it's starting to split. Mainly those big political figures like Carlson or Ben Shapiro or help me out here. Other big MAGA guys.
He's not MAGA anymore, right?
No. So these big names are starting to turn away from Trump. And this is mainly because almost none of them were truly authentic MAGA. I'm not sure about, for example, someone like Asmongold, what his position is now, if he's among them, but I'd say he's also wavering. That lunatic, Alex Jones.
I sometimes see some clips of Asmong. He's kind of like Czech Loud, very confused, and I think he often tries to convince himself so he can feel like he belongs somewhere. For example, he supports trans people in the LGBT community because he was able to empathize with trans people who are dissatisfied with their own bodies after his own experience where he kind of broke his front tooth. And before he got it fixed, he just didn't recognize himself in the mirror and was disgusted with himself because of it. He said if those people experience this their whole lives, he must empathize with and support them.
That's interesting. That's honestly an interesting reasoning that a guy breaks a tooth, and because of that, he understands the mentality of a trans person. I'm not entirely sure that's comparable.
No to je jedno, hele. Důležitý je...
Ano. Yes, but what's important is that this whole group, who aren't really true MAGA, real die-hard MAGA people, they're starting to turn away from Trump. Of course, those who are really hardcore, they stick with MAGA, with Trump, and with everyone else. We definitely have some information about what Donald Trump's popularity is right now. I think it's around 30 to 35% across the whole American society, which would mean that maybe 40 or 50% of the people who voted for Trump no longer support him. Or they wouldn't vote for him or support him anymore.
I'll just add something. Someone did an analysis based on approval rates. If you divide the states now, I don't remember exactly, I'd have to look it up, but there was a 20% difference. The approval rate or disapproval rate had to be at least 20% different for it to be counted one way or the other. And if we only count this, then the Democrats would win. Not in all states, only in those where the approval rate is 20 plus or the disapproval rate is 20 plus.
Will you send it?
That's already...
Or?
Yeah, I see. Well, I'll have to find that somewhere.
Yeah, I see. So when you talk...
So actually, for a moment, if you only counted these states over 20%, then the Democrats would win the election.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's clear. I think it's probably not really up for debate at this point that the Democrats are heading for a blue wave. But what's more interesting is the development in the MAGA sphere, that those who are turning away from Trump, the reason they're turning away from Trump isn't because they think Trump is so bad, but they're people who voted for him thinking he wouldn't start wars, would improve the economy, and so on. Simply put, these are people who voted for him without really knowing what Trump is about. Naive people, if you will. And they're turning away from him now, not because he's so bad, but because in their opinion, he's just the same as all the other politicians. That he's not so dumb that it's obvious, but that even if they elected Kamala, it would be exactly the same. So the disappointment with Donald Trump isn't that he's worse than Kamala Harris. The disappointment is that he's basically the same, as if he were Kamala Harris. You get what I mean?
So it's something like here, with naive voters for the Motorist Party who thought that the motorists would really keep an eye on Babish.
Mm-hmm. It's something similar, like if now Babish messed everything up, and the people who voted for him didn't say, wow, Babish is an idiot, Fiala is better. No, like if they said, wow, Fiala is exactly the same as Babish, next time we have to vote for Okamura. And that brings us back to America, that in America right now, there's disappointment with Trump. But that disappointment with Trump doesn't necessarily have to turn into support for normal politicians. But there's a big chance it will turn into support for even bigger lunatics than Trump, and maybe even smarter lunatics than Trump. And if you really realize what the mood is like now in the MAGA sphere and in the right-wing sphere, if I put it that way, the main disappointment is the war in Iran, of course, but also the Jews. Trump's servility towards the Jews and anti-Semitism. That's really going on there.
Kovac doing the subtitles really wasn't expecting you to just say Jews like that and you just dropped it.
Yeah, sure. So anti-Semitism, that's going on there. So people might vote in the next election for someone who's a bit like, well, Israel isn't exactly kosher. Badumk. You know what I mean?
I think the current, I think that's already a mainstream view these days, I'd say. Liberals have hated Israel for 2 years because of what it's doing in Gaza, and Republicans started to hate it because it's just doing what it's doing and dragging the United States into more wars. More of our money is going there, and it's just another worry that our people just shouldn't have to worry about anymore, which is what Donald promised.
Nope.
Here's the problem.
That you remember that beautiful sentence from Vance before the elections.
Yes?
Vote for Donald Trump, not Kamala Harris, or she'll involve you in a war with Iran.
I've seen quite a few TikToks that were something along the lines of, hey, the Republicans were right. They told me if you vote for Kamala Harris, America will go to war, gas prices will be high, and unemployment will rise. And they were right. I voted for Kamala Harris, America went to war, gas prices went up, and unemployment increased. They were right all along. I shouldn't have voted for Kamala Harris. You get the jokes, right? We get them?
We get them.
Great. Say it.
Just say it to Peter at the debacle.
I know. I'll tell him. We'll see how I handle it. Každopádně k tomu protižidovství. Now, America can actually go in two directions. Either they'll elect someone who's kind of against Israel, you know, taking that European approach, if I can put it that way. Yeah, like they won't be completely against Israel, but they won't be sucking up to them either. They'll fight against the Jewish lobby and so on. That would be the okay direction. But then there's a big problem, a huge issue, that anti-Semitism could be fertile ground for a new American Hitler, if I'm exaggerating. Opinions?
I agree with you. The scene will be split into two parts, just like you said.
So anti-Semitism will take over, or not anti-Semitism, but anti-Israel pandering will take over. But on one side, there will be people who are a bit more rational, and on the other side, there will just be Hitlers.
No, I agree with that division, but the pro-Israel lobby will take over. Yeah, this is where the scene splits. A large part will simply say it's not the best to support Israel 100% in everything. We should support them less, put a bit more pressure on them and make sure they stick to what we've agreed on, cut some funding and financial flows. We don't have to pour such huge amounts of money into Israel when we basically get nothing out of it. That will be a large part of society, but an even bigger part of society will be pro-Israel. And the lobby will stir this up more and more, so there will be an ever-growing gap between these parts of society.
So the anti-Jewish side will become even more radicalized.
Yes.
Which will then lead to Hitlers. Everything ends up with Hitler in the end.
Unless you don't believe in horseshoe theory.
Like, very prominent Jews are also often really big anti-Semites, right?
Or, well, on one side you have Hitler, on the other side Stalin, you know, like not everything ends with Hitler, everything ends with extremism from one side or the other. I just sent you, please, the link to The Economist, where there's that interactive map. If you counted those states where it's over 20% on one side or the other, the elections would look like this.
Yeah, I don't see the map.
It's a short link. It's right there in the chat. I just sent it now.
I opened it, yeah. And great, the map. Excellent.
I'll click through the rest, okay? I mean, where you... Oh, sorry. Idaho should be red too.
I'm sorry.
That the Republicans would have in total 7 points.
Seven Republican senators, or rather congressmen.
Those are the electors. Those are just the points you collect, man, and now I'll just click through the rest if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead. Click through.
So we can like see Michigan is blue then. So
Anyway, we have some information here. So 452 days after the defeat, after the start of Donald Trump's term, the president's net approval rating is 18, which is 0.2 points higher than last week. Great. 38% approve of the president, 56% disapprove, 7% are unsure. That's 38% support across society as a whole. Yeah. So 38% are those who completely agree with him, but also those who only partially agree, and they're kind of pissed off about what's happening with Israel, you know? So it's not really 100% support either. That 38%. But the prevailing feeling is still kind of, we approve, okay? Yeah. Okay.
I mean, it seems to me that Donald Trump's voters started to notice and realize that Donald Trump is doing exactly what he said he would do, and that he's pushing for the parts that he wrote in his book, or well, he didn't write it, but he's pushing for parts from the book 2035 where everything is nicely laid out.
sorry, what's the name of that project? The project is called 2025.
Sorry.
No, he didn't write it.
It was written by Heritage Foundation. Yeah, sure.
But that's for the Republicans, right?
That's a map showing which way each state leans, kind of.
So this is an election prediction, right? If I understand it correctly.
Well, prediction, I think Texas probably, that's not really an estimate.
Right? A poll, let's say, or something like that. It could be considered a pre-election poll.
I'd say it's the direction things are headed.
Yeah, the direction things are headed. It's close. What does direction of heading mean?
Well, it just means that if the situation keeps developing in the same way for some time in the future, it could end up like this.
Okay, so it's an election prediction.
Yes.
All right?
Let's say,
Pre-election poll.
if we take that 20% as some kind of threshold, then for example, Pennsylvania is 19 points, so it's short by 1. It didn't make it. Even so, they're blue. For example, Alabama is just 1 point above that red line in terms of approval rating. So Alabama is very close to tipping either into the undecided or into the blue.
Yeah, Alabama is next to Florida here.
Yes. So what states do we have here?
Tennessee,
Dakota.
Arkansas, Oklahoma, Utah, VI, I don't know, Idaho. Wow, I don't know the American states. I'll have to learn them.
MTO is Montana.
I'll give you a contact in AMD is North Dakota with a map.
All right.
If you mean some unnamed bold streamer, then please don't do it.
The owner of the map. Anyway, let's just leave this thing be. And it looks like the Democrats are heading for a massive victory. The Republicans are heading for a massive defeat. And the next presidential election and the next political developments are starting to take shape here, with Israel becoming a major topic. And anti-Semitism.
I think that no one will address that anti-Semitism.
They won't? No.
I think that if the Democrats brought it up, it would actually hurt them more.
You think so, huh?
I think so. Israel will probably be a big topic there. The domestic economy will be a huge topic.
Well, that's obvious, so that will be linked to Iran, right? Because gas prices are high because of Iran and Israel. That connects nicely.
They will direct it at Israelis, not at Jews.
Yeah, sure, at the Israeli government, but it will get connected, right? People there will hear Jews. Yes.
Like, people will hear Jews, but in those debates and on those issues, I think we'll hear the word Jews like 0 times.
Well, who knows? We'll see. You know, radicals are capable of anything. And it's hard to say whether some interesting, let's say, third force couldn't appear in America, one that would start uniting anti-Semites from both the left and the right.
like the Ku Klux Klan or something, for the third or fourth time, and again?
Probably not the Ku Klux Klan, but it wouldn't have to be that kind of anti-Semitism. It could be some kind of hidden anti-Semitism, if I put it that way, at least partially.
Some kind of nationalistic anti-Semitism?
We can definitely agree that what we need is this time a proper right-wing party.
No, we don't agree on that.
That was a joke.
I know the public affairs thing didn't work out, and the ODS in the 90s didn't either, but this time, the motorists will really keep an eye on things. Really.
We really need a right-wing party, like the Democrats. That's a right-wing party, in case no one has told you that yet.
I know it didn't really work out with those motorists, but that Kubazar Czechia, that's real right-wing.
That's right, it'll turn out well this time. Anyway, this time we've completely gone off the rails, all the way to Czechia. With this, I would end our talk about America, about American politics. We started with the Pope, ended with anti-Semitism, which seems to me like a rather elegant journey, because we started with Catholics and Jesus, and ended with hatred towards Jews, and those things go together beautifully.
It's not mutually exclusive.
It actually complements it, because after all, who betrayed Jesus?
Exactly.
But he was killed by the Romans, so anyway, well, it doesn't matter. Well, it doesn't matter. Let's not talk about it. Let's not talk about it. Anyway, I'd like to end this talk here, and we'll continue with the stream. And the next topic we have coming up is Ukraine and the weapons Ukraine is using in its fight. And that's going to be a very interesting topic. Very interesting. No one can make the topic of weapons in Ukraine as interesting as we do. No one. No one knows as much about it as we do.
That's why we'll be glad if you buy a subscription or support us in any way.
Yeah, because on Hero or in any other way, you can support this work. And on Hero or as members, you can watch the full recording uninterrupted or join us live. Now we're going to discuss it, and you'll see it in the next part of this podcast. See you. Bye.